Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Mindset and Muscle podcast. I'm your host, Keshi, and today we're going to be talking about calories. Ooh. So, we're going to be talking about energy balance or calories 101, like I'm probably going to title this episode. But basically, I want you to have a good understanding of the basics and the science behind the basics. Why? Because I don't want you to just be completely and quickly influenced by whichever new diet or new fad, which some of them are, which is trending at the moment or which is trending at any point in time. I want you to really understand how energy balance works and why it's whether or not you're tracking calories, why they're still important, why they still play a role, what role they play, and how you can use it again to make it work for you, basically. So let's start by defining what a calorie is or understanding what the definition is. You don't That's not super important, but I don't know, maybe you want to know. So a calorie is a unit of energy. Specifically, it's the amount of energy required to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water by 1 degree Celsius. So that definition might not really mean much to you, and that's totally fine. You don't have to remember what it is, but just in case you wanted to know, that's what it is. Just don't let it intimidate you. So, usually when we refer to calories, we actually are referring to kilocalories. But in the context of nutrition, calories represent the energy obtained from food and beverages, basically that our bodies are using for various functions like movement and breathing and digestion. Usually that is considered calories in. So whichever you're absorbing, you're intaking and absorbing basically. And then calories out, what we're spending. And again, whether you are tracking your macros or your calories or not, they still play a role. Calories in versus calories out still matter, whether or not you're paying attention to it. So it's important to balance it, which is why we're learning about energy balance today, which is why balancing the intake and expenditure of calories, aka calories in versus calories out, is still essential for you to achieve your health and fitness goals. Now, let's talk a few of the terms, or I'll explain a few of the terms that are on the calories out aspect. Because you might hear, so those are going to be terms like BMR, RMR, thermal effective food. So things that you may or may not have heard, but again, to get a better idea, let's explain what everything is. So the basal metabolic rate, or BMR, refers to the minimum amount of energy expended by the body at rest to maintain basic physiological functions such as breathing, circulation, maintaining body temperature, and just like supporting the function of your organs, so things like that. So basically the energy required for yourself, for your body to sustain vital functions while you're awake. So brain function and respiration and things like that. So this is often used interchangeably, I would say, or and slash or confused with the resting metabolic rate, RMR. So while they are very similar, they are not the same because the resting metabolic rate, or RMR, is usually around 10% higher than BMR because it also takes into account digestion, so the breakdown of food. So again, they're not completely the same, but they're usually kind of categorized together a lot of times, is what I noticed. The next term is the thermal effect of food, or TEF. So that refers to the energy the body expends to digest, absorb, and process nutrients from. So basically, breaking down the food, digesting it, and processing those like nutrients. So different macronutrients which are actually, I should have explained those before. The macros or macronutrients are carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So those require different amounts of energy for digestion. So typically, proteins take the most energy to break down or to digest. So the thermal effect of food for protein is higher than for carbohydrates and fats. So usually proteins have the higher thermal effect of food, followed by carbohydrates, and then fats, taking the last place. So again, that's the amount of energy. So before I continue with the next term, a lot of people, when I say calories in versus calories out, and that you need to, for example, if you need to lose weight, your calories out have to be higher than your calories in, they think that they have to spend enough time on the treadmill or something to burn, like, let's just say 2,000 calories that they're eating. So then when I tell them that spending an hour like on the treadmill only burns a certain like a few hundred calories or something like that, they're like, what do you mean a few hundred? Or like, what do you mean I spent all this time walking, but it's only a couple hundred calories? Like, I need to burn 1,000 calories or 2,000 calories in a day or things like that. Like, how much exercise am I supposed to do? Well, no, because that goes into the aspect of exercise and not actually your whole, like, basically you don't have to like actively exercise to burn all those calories that you take in. Most of it is just done by your body to keep you alive. I guess that's what I mean. I don't know why I kind of explain that in a really difficult way. um it would be easier if I just had a diagram to just draw everything, but it's okay. I'm going to try to make it work. So basically, most of it would be for your RMR. So that could be, let's just say, 1,600 calories per day that somebody's RMR is. And then another small part of it would be the thermal effect of food that we just talked about. So a part of, so a few hundred calories, a few hundred calories per day, again, for that maybe. Now we have a pretty big part. I would say that's the second biggest part after RMR would be the NEAT. I feel like that's a pretty common term now, but NEAT is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So that talks about or includes the energy spent during daily activities that are not planned exercise. So that would include, you walking, standing, fidgeting, anything that you kind of do with your body, like any activity that you do with your body. Again, you might be somebody who fidgets a lot when they talk, and your need would probably be higher. Or if you're just walking to have your regular activities or things like that, whatever you do without really planning it or putting it as like exercise would be considered need. So that can significantly contribute to the overall energy expenditure again after. So the biggest one would be the RMR, and the next one would be NEAT. And some people say to increase your NEAT, add like walking into your daily routine or things like that to increase your NEAT. I feel like that's a more convenient way to say it, but technically, if you're doing something on purpose, it goes into the exercise aspect instead of NEAT. So then it would be. I don't know if we use. Do we use exercise activity thermogenesis like EAT? I'm not actually sure. I don't really hear that very often. I don't even know if I've heard that, but it does look pretty familiar. But anyway, I would just call the other one as like exercise, but yeah, either way, walking would still increase your energy expenditure. So it doesn't really matter what category it goes to, but yeah. So I talked about those 3 to 4 categories. So now if you're looking at like a pie chart of energy expenditure, you would see a big chunk of it being for RMR. And I'm not including BMR and RMR just because, again, like, in those cases we kind of just choose one or the other when talking about um all of it, like, because what am I trying to say? Because basically BMR is included in that RMR, because I said like the resting metabolic rate is 10% higher than BMR, but it does take the BMR into consideration. I hope that makes sense. Let me know if it didn't. I hope you kind of got a gist of it. I feel like I'm explaining it, but I'm trying to really break it down for somebody who's never heard of that. But I'm worried that I'm making it more confusing. So, yeah, if you had a pie chart, the biggest part would be for RMR. And then you would have the second biggest part being for NEAT. And then you would have a little bit for the thermal effect of food. And then probably a tiny bit for exercise. Because a lot of us also overestimate the amount of calories that we burn during exercise and sometimes underestimate the amount of calories we take in with food or drinks. Now let us talk about maintenance calories. So, maintenance calories, that's the amount of energy that is required to maintain your current weight, but that basically means that calories in and calories out are equal. So you're eating the same amount of calories that you're spending. And by spending, I mean through all the various ways that we talked about just now. Now we also have a calorie deficit, and that occurs when you consume fewer calories than what your body is spending. So that means calories in is less than calories out. And that leads to weight loss. And that's what you need for weight loss. Again, whether or not you're tracking your calories, that's important. You need to be in a calorie deficit to lose weight, whether or not you're tracking it or not. Because again, that's where the definition is important. Calorie is a unit of energy. Okay. And then on the other side of that, we have a calorie surplus, which occurs when you consume more calories than your body is spending. So when calories out is more than calories in, obviously then that leads to weight gain. So if you're bulking, you would be in a calorie surplus or like maintenance or very close to maintenance calories as well. But if you're cutting or trying to lose weight, and that's also terms that maybe people don't know, bulking, you're going to be in a calorie surplus. Cutting, that's when you're trying to lose weight, you're in a calorie deficit. Again, I'm going to say that again, whether or not you track calories, this still matter. That's so important because some people say, they don't actually matter that much. You just need to stop eating after 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. Or you just need to not eat carbs. Or you just need to insert other other type of diet or things like that. Or some people intermittent fasting or things like that. Well, all those things have something in common. So if you tell me I've tried intermittent fasting and I've lost weight, yeah, but that's because when you were intermittent fasting, you weren't eating for a good portion of the day, so you only had, I think, an 8-hour window for you to eat or something like that. And in that 8-hour window, you were eating less than you were before, and you just, without knowing it, you put yourself in a calorie deficit. Same thing if you stop eating at like 6 p.m. or 7 p.m., whatever you were kind of maybe munching on late at night, or even just whatever you just tend to eat less when you have any restriction, including a time restriction. But at the end of the day, if you eat the same amount, but just in that, like, everything you were eating before, you just eat everything before 7 p.m., you wouldn't have lost weight. Same thing with carbs when people go keto or something like that. If you're just removing things from your diet and not adding more things, or when you're adding more things, you're adding like other things that would still allow you to be in a calorie deficit, that's when you lose weight. But if you remove like all the carbs that you're eating and then just match the calories, so you eat other things to match those amounts of calories, you will not lose weight. And that's how it works. I just, and a little anecdote, I don't know if that's what it's called, but When I was vegan, I went through phases of both gaining weight and losing weight. And people would say, oh, obviously you would lose weight when you're vegan. Like that just, it seems crazy for you to think of somebody vegan or vegetarian even. Because probably most people you know that are vegan or vegetarian are pretty slim or whatever. Well, I was a vegan who just loved to eat, I don't know, like vegan ice cream or things like that. So at some point, I just gained a lot of weight being vegan. So at the end of the day, like what I want to make you understand is that energy balance still matters whether or not you're tracking it or whether or not you're doing like any type of diet that you're doing. And that's also important because then you can understand that you don't have to do any of those if you don't want to. If that works for you and you want, if you like intermittent fasting, then do it. That's totally fine. It's a good way. It's a maybe easy, convenient way for you to be in a calorie deficit. Like if you don't want to eat breakfast anyway, then fine, do it. But if you're starving when you have to wait until noon to eat, then don't do it. Like if it's making you miserable, then you know that you can still lose weight without this specific method. Now, that was all that I planned to actually talk about today. But then while I was talking about macronutrients, I figured I will just give you a little bit more information on that, especially since we're talking about calories and macronutrients. So I said that the macronutrients, or what we refer to as macros, are protein, carbohydrates, and fats. So protein and carbohydrates, 1 gram of protein has 4 calories, and 1 gram of carbohydrates has 4 calories, and then 1 gram of fat has 9 calories. I just want to put that out there because I don't really know which other episode I would just randomly talk about this. I will probably mention it a bunch of times, but it seemed to be good information for this episode. So that's also important to know and good to know. So when then you're tracking your calories, it's something that's helpful. For example, if you go keto but then have a lot of oil in your food or things like that. Well, I said 1 gram of fat has 9 calories. So then if you're dumping, I don't know how, I don't know 1 tablespoon or 2 tablespoons of oil, how much it would be in grams. But if you're just like dumping oil in everything you're making, that will add up pretty quickly. Also, because there's really nowhere else for me to add this, 1 gram of alcohol has 7 calories. But yeah, I don't really like if that's just for if you're kind of curious. So that does um is good to take into consideration too, but also it doesn't really do anything much for the body. So I just try to avoid it whenever I can. Maybe have it from time to time, like if it makes you happy, but yeah, it's never a good thing to depend too much on, let's just say. But yeah, I think I'm going to leave it at that for this episode just because it was already kind of fact heavy, but it was also like a basic episode. So that's things that are going to help you understand other episodes better when I'm going to be talking about those terms. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I should mention in this one. If not, I can just make another episode. It's not a big deal. But I hope that this really gave you an idea of how it works and why it's actually simpler than you think to understand, at least on like a basic level, and why you really shouldn't be, you should at least think twice when somebody's telling you something is the best way, like a diet is the best way for you to lose weight. Maybe you have a little bit more of an idea now as to, again, like I said, some of those might work because they're allowing you to be in a calorie deficit that just don't work in the way that you think it does. Like it's not like your body doesn't know what time it is when you're eating. So stopping at like 7, that's not what's making it lose weight, is what I mean. But yeah, I hope that was helpful. I'm gonna try to have more episodes that are more, again, either fact heavy. I don't think a lot of them would be like heavy with definitions. One of them definitely will, when I will explain a lot of like fitness terms, but most of it will be more so information after. But I'm planning on incorporating a lot more nutrition and fitness episodes now. So hopefully it's going to be a good balance of like mindset and muscle, because I'm truly passionate about both. Again, if you like this episode, please give me a 5-star review as well as share it with your friends. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.